Just how do you watch 18 games of soccer at the same time? MLS has revealed their participation in the Open Cup, and Rocco Camiso did in fact bash MLS on a burner account. That and more on Wednesday's Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. This is Morning Kickaround, where we cover the world's favorite game from the world's most favoritist country, coming to you live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning. I'm Robert Kerr. He's Jason Davis. Hope you're well. Thank you for joining us. It's Wednesday, and there's a ton of soccer to cover, a ton on the horizon. Just how are you coping with it all, Mr. Davis?
I am stretching. I'm hydrating. I'm working out my FOTMOB notifications because you don't want something spoiled that you want to see happen, in your real time. So, that's one message I would have for anybody out there who's going to be talking about or watching the Champions League today. Make sure that if you have FOTMOB and you have notifications turned on, that you want to get those notifications and have goals spoiled. There you go.
Yeah. And if you're in an office setting, maybe put them on silent so that they're not dinging on in your pocket all day long. Seeing as how you don't get to show off on the radio, tell us about what you're wearing today. I think I know.
I got one of my Ford Madison kits out today, and as our producer Jenny said, you never need an excuse to rock some Ford Madison. They know they know what they're doing up there in Wisconsin. However, I wore this today. I was inspired at the last minute to put this on because I had a conversation or an interaction with Peter Wilt, one of the founders of Ford Madison, on my Blue Sky account this morning about something we're going to talk about later in the show. We will bring Peter's thoughts into the program via what he said. And maybe one day, shout out to Peter, we'll have him on the program and talk about his thoughts about the NASL versus U.S. Soccer trial, maybe Ford Madison, maybe who knows what else could come up with Peter Will.
On today's show, we're going to talk headlines, obviously a big slate full of games this afternoon, but we're going to dig into the progress on the NASL antitrust lawsuit, some stuff there, and we're also going to talk about MLS's participation in the Open Cup, so definitely throw your opinions, thoughts, and questions into the chat. Help us become the center of the American soccer conversation by telling your people, and if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button on Morning Kickaround's YouTube channel. We've hit 500, and since then, the numbers have been climbing significantly, so thank you to everyone who has clicked subscribe, and continue to do so if you haven't already. Follow along on social media at mkickaround on X, Instagram, and the Blue Sky. Write us an email at morningkickaround@gmail.com. And newly added, we have a Ko-Fi page now, so if you're able to support us, please do. Ko-Fi.com/morningkickaround. You can do a one-time donation or subscribe to something more regular, maybe monthly perhaps. So big thanks if you head over to Ko-Fi.com/morningkickaround. All right, let's get to Wednesday's headlines and kick today's long balls. It's Wednesday, January 29th, 2025, an unprecedented day in Champions League football. 18 games playing simultaneously. With that being said, how in the world will you watch 18 games simultaneously, Mr. Davis?
Well, thank you to Galasso and CBS Sports for producing a show that attempts to hit every game and the moments that matter. Now, imagine with 18 simultaneous kickoffs, they won't be able to show us things, immediately after they happened every time. It'll be like there's a goal in this game. Oh, and then, 3 minutes ago, 4 minutes ago, there was a goal in a different game, and now we cut to that game. I talked to Nico Cantor on my radio show yesterday, and there will be a live table. This is the thing for me that's maybe most important about this, is being able to see the live table. Because as goals happen, teams are going to be moving up and down, and that's the drama. Now, I don't always love a live table when there are games that aren't happening simultaneously because, things change, and then it's like, Manchester United is up to 8th, and then the goal is scored because Onana stinks, and, now they're back down to 13th, and you're like, it doesn't, none of that mattered. In this case, I do think a live table is going to add a lot to the drama. I don't think you're going to be able to glean anything important, anything sort of in depth from watching these games if you try to watch more than one. I mean, my standard thought is, and I've watched thousands and thousands and thousands of soccer games in my career, and even before that, just as a fan, if you're watching more than one game, you're not seeing either or any of those games. Does that make sense, Rob? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's easy. When you're watching one game, it's easy enough to get sucked at watching the ball and not watching what the larger picture, but let alone putting your eyes from here to here to here to here. And if one guy's scoring a goal over here, there's some movement or something interesting happening that's not, occupying your eyeballs.
Exactly. It's sort of like in White Men Can't Jump when Wesley Snipes and who's the other guy, Woody Harrelson, when they have the conversation about Jimi Hendrix in the car. Do you remember this conversation that they have in the car in White Men Can't Jump? Or I'm the only one that thinks about this movie on a regular basis. There's a conversation about Jimi Hendrix in the car.
Most of my memories with that movie are Rosie Perez related, I think, actually.
That makes sense. I understand why you would have Rosie Perez related thoughts about that movie. But in that movie, Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes are arguing about Jimi Hendrix because Woody Harrelson, Billy Hoyle, says, I listen to Jimmy. And Wesley Snipes says, but do you hear Jimmy? You may listen to Jimmy, but do you hear Jimmy? These are different things. And that's kind of it. Like your eyes are taking in images from the game, but you're not understanding what's happening at an actual soccer level. Now, that's for the purists among us. That might not be the ideal way to watch a soccer match. That's not what we want. We want to be looking for how teams are using width or whether the midfield is being played through or over. Like we want to see these things happening. We want to understand the push-pull of the tactics and see what's going on there. But if you're talking about a pure entertainment spectacle, Robert, there's nothing that can match this. Right? I was looking for a word yesterday for this. Did it on my radio show. I put it on my Blue Sky, Davis Jason on Blue Sky if you want to find me. And I think finally somebody hit me with the right answer as to what to call this. And he said footinalia, but I'm going to go with footballnalia because I think that's a better, I like footballnalia better than footinalia. So you know bacchanalia? You know about bacchanalia, right? Bacchanalia is like an ancient word for a over-the-top crazy party with wine and sex and all kinds of crazy things. Festivals in Rome dedicated to the god Bacchus. And Bacchus was the god of fertility, festivity, insanity, ritual madness, religious ecstasy. This was Bacchus. So this is a footballnalia that we've got coming today.
So is Bacchus one of those type of parties that I heard about that they'd eat so much that they'd throw up so that they could eat some more?
Possibly. Is that apocryphal or real? Do we know if that's real? I will also say, if you've ever seen Caligula, and I think it's difficult to find these days, that's what the Bacchanalia kind of vibe would be. If you know about the very controversial film, Caligula.
I know that I'm getting old and my eyes are getting a little bit fuzzy, but I think I'm gonna have to focus on just one game. If you were to have to watch just the one, you said you're not really watching any if you're watching them all at the same time. If you were to single one out,
you're not seeing any. You're not seeing any if you're watching them all at the same time. But you're watching them, but you're not seeing them. Right? These are two words that mean the same thing. By the way, this is confusing to me in Spanish as well, because you have mirar and you have ver. Anyway, so Manchester City is where a lot of people are going to be looking because they are currently on the outside of the top 24, meaning if they don't get any points from their match today against Club Brugge at the Etihad, they will be knocked out of the first phase of the Champions League. And that would have been unthinkable when the season started, correct? Am I wrong about that?
I mean, at Halloween time, we wouldn't have thought that either. I mean, it's really been such a edge of a table experience there for Manchester City. So would we have thought that they were on the outside looking in the Premier League? No. Would we have thought that they were like even more on the outside looking in the Champions League? Certainly not. And their matchup with Brugge.
Not with 24 spots out of 36. Like, as much as this is drama and I'm excited and there's still some jockeying to be done and it will be live table watching and all those things, I will point out that 24 of 36 teams, only 12 teams are getting eliminated today. Only 12 teams will be knocked out of the Champions League at this phase. Now, the top 8 will be into the round of 16 automatically, and then those teams 9 through 24 will be into the playoff round. But, that is a thing to consider. Juve, not in a precarious position. I think they're through to the top 24, but can they improve their spot? They have Benfica. Benfica's also trying to make sure of their place. They can be jumped over by a City or a Zagreb, Dinamo Zagreb, who plays AC Milan. Milan's all the way up in 6th. They're just trying to make sure of their spot in the top 8. So there's a couple of things. And then, yes, shout out to my man Jonathan Tannewald, who will also get name-checked later in the show for a different reason. Stuttgart and PSG. Stuttgart at home, German side, Bundesliga trying to fly the flag for German football. And then you have PSG, massive club, so much money spent, Parisian giants and all of that. If they don't get a result today, it could be curtains for their Champions League, and that would be nearly as surprising as City getting knocked out. Although I think it's likely that both of them will be through by the end of the day. I think that's likely, although not guaranteed. PSG could be in serious trouble.
You think that would happen, but we shall see. Long ball number 2. Most importantly, there's a lot of Americans playing in this cacophony of Champions League this afternoon. What is kind of at stake? We already know that Ricardo Pepi will be in the lineup versus Liverpool this afternoon. What do you think he has? Do you think he's going to be putting on a resume builder performance in front of his future suitors for Liverpool? What kind of Americans in the Champions League final day are you looking at here, Jason?
Okay, I'm thrilled that Ricardo Pepi is going to get a chance to start against Liverpool. It's a little less exciting that he's going to be playing Liverpool's B team because Van Dijk and Salah and McAllister and Szoboszlai and Diaz are all back in Liverpool hanging out on Merseyside. They're going to be watching 18 games just like us. They're not going to be in Holland for this match. So that does take a little bit of the excitement away, but it's still an opportunity for Ricardo Pepi, and I will certainly be checking in on him as the day proceeds. Of course, again, Milan, 2 Americans, Pulisic and Musa. Pulisic back, scored on the weekend. Obviously, they needed some late goals to get that result over Parma.
That was
crazy. They have a chance here to be sure of things. They go just a little bit east to Zagreb to play Dinamo Zagreb. They will be favorites in that game, but I don't think it'll be easy. I think the atmosphere in Zagreb will be insane.
Yeah.
So I'll check in on that. I do think it's very possible both Musa and Pulisic start that game. We expect that Pulisic will be in the starting lineup in that match. There is that. You go down the list. All right. This is the one, right? This is the one where we have the most trepidation and doubt and what's happening and oh my gosh. And they're not playing, it's not a matchup that entices you with Dortmund hosting Shakhtar Donetsk, who is all the way down in 27th right now, and their chances of making it through are slim to none. They have a -6 goal difference, so they'd have to win, get a bunch of help, and turn over a goal difference problem. So they'd have to win big against Dortmund. But will Gio get to play? Will Gio Reyna get to play today? And will this be an opportunity not only for him to play, but maybe to roll that in to what's coming next for Dortmund? Like Dortmund is just on the verge here of making sure that they will be playing more Champions League football, and I expect that they will be. Right, they're in 14th now. I think mathematically they're already through to at least the round of playoff matches to try to get to the round of 16. So that's not really an issue. So maybe there is a free roll here for Dortmund and Mike Tulberg, who's the interim manager. I have, by the way, heard rumors that they've talked to Ralph Ragnick about taking over as interim. What is it about Ralph Ragnick that everybody's like, hey, can you just come be our coach for like 3 months? Please, Ralph, I don't know what you're doing. Like, Manchester United did this. It feels weird.
Maybe he's just like really good in short bursts. Like he can put his input, make a stamp on a team, and then move on. Maybe he's just not a person that you can be around all year for that. Maybe he just doesn't have that longevity, like international stuff. He can do a camp, impart his wisdom and his philosophies, and then just let everyone go back home.
Perhaps that's it. Yeah, he's kind of like the wolf from Pulp Fiction. Like he just comes.
He's in and out.
He just comes in. He tells you what to clean with, and then he tells you what to do, and then everybody's good. I guess I don't know. I don't know if that would be good or not for for our man Gio Reyna. But yes, keeping an eye on Gio Reyna and the possibilities. By the way, there's more than one American at Dortmund. It's worth pointing that out as well.
That is a good point.
We're not, we're obviously much more focused on Gio Reyna and his potential to do something maybe in the immediate future with a change of coach. But Cole Campbell's there as well. Don't know if he's even registered for the Champions League. Not sure about that. But it is worth watching to see what goes down at Dortmund as a precursor, as a future. Juventus, we know about McKennie and Weah. Where will McKennie play? That's always a fun game. Guess the position that Weston McKennie will play for Thiago Motta. Again, they got Benfica. That's a tough one. They are at home, and they can improve their place. I mean, it's possible they could jump into the top 8, Juve, and avoid the playoff round. So I think Thiago Motta is going to be going for this in a match that matters. It's also, again, you kind of have to consider what's coming next. And some of these clubs, their league campaign is a little bit not so great, and they want to improve on that. Milan's a good example of that, and they have the Milan derby coming up at the San Siro on Sunday. So Sergio Conceição has that thing to worry about. Okay, we want to be sure of our Champions League place. We want to improve our place in the table. Maybe we want to jump into the top 8 or stay in the top 8, but we have to worry about the league because Milan's league season has not been good to this point. Meanwhile, Juventus has Empoli on Sunday. A little bit of a different challenge for Thiago Motta.
Looking at the chat, I like Miguel's shout. He's very confident in Ricardo Pepi. He's calling a brace at least. So 2 goals, not even. That's the bottom expectation. That's pretty well.
Let's consider this. So you can tell me, you're the Liverpool guy, right? You're our resident Liverpool fan.
Sure.
So no Van Dijk. I believe Konate was also left on Mercy's side. So who's going to start? Kwanzaa is going to start at center back, I would guess, if he hasn't been mentioned as a player left out. So who else is there that Ricardo Pepi is going to be dealing with as a center forward?
That's a really good question because there has been a little bit of movement in the background for Liverpool for the center back position. I'm not sure if Joe Gomez is healthy enough yet.
I think projected.
Joe Gomez isn't back yet, and it's actually projected with the FOTMob's projecting the player that went in there in emergency circumstances, and I'm surprised that they don't have anyone else there, but because they already used him as a sub as a center back when they were kind of caught out in league play, was that weekend or so ago, but Wataru Endo is projected to be the center back pairing with Kwanzaa this afternoon. So I think that there's got to be a better option than there, but Schlott trusted him in that, in a Premier League game, and he's projected here. Usually those projections by FOTMob, they're informed by reports and various sources. So, and we've seen evidence of it before. So there could be something to Miguel. Maybe Pepe could take advantage of a center back or a center midfielder playing out of position in center back.
Yeah. If Wataru Endo is playing center back in a Champions League match at Eindhoven, when I
with
know
a teenager, partnering
a
teenager, yeah.
And partnering a teenager, I would bet on Ricardo Pepi having a nice day. But we shall see. We shall see. And by the way, also worth mentioning that Malik Tillman is injured and will not play for PSV Eindhoven.
That's a bit of a shame. But I do want to kind of keep in mind like what we're looking at with looking at the table now. We should almost take a photograph with the table now of which teams are in that top 8 and that middle blue section, and underneath I have a feeling will look nothing like that come this evening. I mean, there's so thin margins between here. So any sort of anxiety and trepidation that teams like Manchester City or teams like PSG might fall out, I feel like might end up being bluster, because a lot of the time when the truly elite teams have the threat of being put to the sword like that, they often come through.
I think there will be I think there will be some surprises, though, Rob. You may be confident in the big clubs getting through, but I do think there will be some surprises. And regardless, all right, so the drama will be there. Maybe it won't be as intense as it could be, but I do think, and that's mostly because of matchup here. Again, Manchester City home to Club Brugge. By the way, Brugge, who is on their way potentially, if they can get just a single point of into the next round of the tournament. I mean, if they could be jumped, they're on 11 points. There are 2 teams on 8, so they could be jumped if results don't work to their advantage. But I do think there will be surprises, and we're guaranteed some big clubs having to be drawn into that playoff round rather than be in that top 8 and booking their place for the round of 16.
Looking ahead, we're getting down the field now. Long ball number 3 here for Wednesday morning. Leo Messi's influence only deepens at Inter Miami. Call it Inter Messi, perhaps, as the club changes president of operations. The president of football, Saul Sanelhi, and you'll have to correct me on that one. I'm sure you're going to do that, Jason, the pronunciation of that outgoing president, no longer in charge and replaced by club academy director Guillermo Hoyas, who is reportedly a person close to Messi himself.
Yeah, I mean, look, the mechanism here. I mean, the story is that Raul Sanllehi went onto the bus, the team bus, and had a bit of a disagreement, right? A contretemps with Lionel Messi on the bus. I don't know why I went French instead of Spanish, but there you go. And that led to his demotion. He boarded a bus that was supposed to be only for players and coaches. Messi apparently took issue with this. There was a tense exchange. The specifics of the conversation are not known, but now Sanllehi has been demoted, moved, and Hoyos has taken over in that role. And because Hoyos has this previous history, long-standing close relationship with Lionel Messi going back to his days at the Barcelona Academy when Messi was a kid, he said that Hoyos was his soccer dad, like his football father in Barcelona. So this is not, this is not just like, there was an argument, there was a disagreement, Sanllehi deserves to be demoted, and we put in place somebody else in the organization or somebody that, has some MLS experience. No, they went and got Messi's guy. Messi's boy shows up. Messi's soccer dad shows up to take this role. Inter Miami responded to Tom Bogert in a statement and said this was all pre-planned. Nonsense. We all see right through this. And it's not a surprise that Jorge Mas has ceded control of Inter Miami to Lionel Messi. And I also don't know that I blame him too much, right? I mean, this has happened so often in other American sports that, and I guess there always is a little bit of controversy around it. It's always a thing. I mean, it's actually happening right now with LeBron James's kid, right? Like it's also, Michael Jordan gets coaches fired. Joe Montana gets coaches fired. Tom Brady gets coaches fired, or changes happen because they want it to happen. When you are a superstar of that level, you naturally have power because your influence is undeniable. And if you're not happy, it could really hurt the prospects of the team. So I'm not sure I blame Moss for, having Lionel Messi and his team and doing things Lionel Messi wants. But, man, you think they could do a better job of, at least pretending that Messi's not in charge, that this is not just the Messi show.
Yeah, it's pretty thinly veiled, and it kind of shows how in these, top flight professional organizations with big egos and a lot at stake, just how aware of every moment you have to be. If it truly was the getting onto the wrong bus and then disagreeing with somebody leads to you losing your job, the emotional, professional and emotional awareness, you just got to be so heightened to there if that was what led to the downfall. But my question to you, I'm the captain now. My question to you, though, is obviously it's fine, and we want MLS clubs to be, independent as they can, have their own approaches to team building, on the field and behind the scenes. And you said, getting your guys into the club is not anything new, but between Mascherano being hired as the coach, close friends, a generation's worth of experience together, and then now his soccer dad joining the office. Do you think that having the close bonds and almost having the in crowd running the show now, would this ultimately end in kind of destruction, or do you think that this will only enhance the Messi influence and raise the quality of that club to unheralded heights or unseen heights.
No, I think that, well, this is putting all of your eggs in the Messi basket, and that means, I mean, they came up short last year, upended by Atlanta in the playoffs, right? I mean, year one was always kind of going to end in MLS disappointment, even though they had the Leagues Cup triumph and all of those things, and reached an Open Cup final and all of that. But this year, this past season, 2024, they were supposed to deliver on the promise. And look, they were the best team in the league, and they set a points record, all those things. But then the playoffs happened, right? And they get upset. So, and Messi only has so much time left. Certainly, Luis Suarez could collapse into dust, could disintegrate at any moment, right? His knee could explode in our faces at any moment. So there's the clock that is ticking. And now, again, you mentioned bringing in Mascherano. Mascherano is there to facilitate what Lionel Messi wants. He's just there to be that buffer between Messi and the media. And you know, because if Messi says, I think we should play this person here, or we should play this formation, or I should get the ball in these areas, is Javier Mascherano going to say, no, that's not my plan, I'm the coach?
Yeah, so if he says that, just like the reports of the dust up in the bus, like, so if Mascherano does like stick to his guns and stands
He's not
steadfast,
but he's not. That's the thing. He's not. Rob, there's no chance that Javier Mascherano stands up to Lionel Messi. He won't even think about it like, oh, I'm backing down or I'm in charge. I think he's very keenly aware of what the dynamic is here. Javier Mascherano. He took the job knowing, I'm here to work for Lionel Messi. I'm the coach in name only, right? And because he doesn't have a managerial career to speak of. Youth teams with Argentina does not make a resume that says you should get a job, even in Major League Soccer. As much as people want to dump on Major League Soccer and the quality, Javier Mascherano is not ready for this job. I mean, not on his resume. On his playing career, sure. You want to make an argument because of how good he was as a player. He could jump to the front of the line, fine. But you know what? Wayne Rooney's proving that doesn't work out, right? So
yeah, that's my point. Is this insider, people going to, blunt the spear or elevate it? I mean,
no. They are, look, they're going to be good this year, right? They're still going to be good. Are they going to be points record good? I don't know. Are they going to be number one seed good? I don't know. But there will be good again this year, right? But there is 100% chance that if they don't succeed this year with this plan, they will be screwed for many, many years after this. That this is a short-term approach to trying to win a championship or trying to build a team. This isn't building, right? This isn't like building for the future. This isn't like putting in a foundation and putting in, I would engineer properly this structure so that we could be a contender in Major League Soccer this year and next year and 10 years from now, right? This is a temporary structure that they have built. And there's a good chance that this is the Fire Festival of MLS clubs, right? This doesn't give you a ton of confidence that if they hit a bump here or there or players get injured, they're going to have a way to navigate that. It is going to be fascinating. It is a soap opera. And here's the problem. We've been talking about the end of extra time and Major League Soccer and Apple TV and the approach to covering the league. And by the way, we haven't covered this news. MLS has announced they're moving all of their production to Stamford, Connecticut, and the new WWE studios that are there.
Soccer from the top rope.
I think they will, obviously. The production values will be good and all that stuff. But this just, again, the end of extra time, and it's going to be on independent media like us to be paying close attention to what's going on in Miami, because I don't think on Apple TV Plus MLS Season Pass, they're going to have a show breaking down the drama at Miami if things go wrong. If maybe there is an argument between Mascherano and Messi and Suarez and Busquets and Alba, or Jorge Mas, decides that he's got to make some change because things are disastrous in June. Like, they're not going to cover it that way. We're going to have to be watching it, and there's a very good chance that it will be that sort of drama.
Yeah, Inter Miami fans crossing their fingers for a successful 2025 because the future might be A little bit barren cupboard, maybe a little bit of Denver Broncos post Peyton Manning for those in Miami. Thank you for tuning in. Like and subscribe to the Morning Kickaround YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, click that button. It does so much to help. We are on the march to 1,000 subscribers. It's going well since we hit that 500 mark and be the next to do it. Follow along on social media at mkickaround. On social media such as X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And then write us a note if you'd like, morningkickaround@gmail.com. And brand new to the show, support us if you'd like, one-time donation, or make it a regular thing, ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. Thank you for tuning in and doing all those things. Coming up next, we're going to dig into the trial for the hearts of soccer's tomorrow. Coming up with a big question here in just one sec. We jumped up the running order there. Big question. We're going to talk about the trial for soccer's future. The NASL versus MLSS, or the MLS USSF trial, hotted up. Rocco Commisso, the NASL commissioner or president, shall I say, owner? What is this official?
Owner of the New York Cosmos, the man who on behalf of NASL is backing their suit against U.S. Soccer and Major League Soccer. So Rocco is the guy funding the challenge, but he's on paper, he's just the owner of the New York Cosmos. He does not have an official role with NASL's headquarters.
So Rocco Commisso took the stand, in which we found out a couple things, including that he had to admit that he used a burner account to actively bash Major League Soccer. Interesting to see a grown man have to admit that.
So in my conversation with Stephen Bank, UCLA law professor who teaches sports law at UCLA, he mentioned this. He mentioned that there was a disclosure that Rocco had a burner account that he was using to attack the people he didn't like in American soccer. And here is a story via Front Office Sports that has a little bit of detail. Starting in 2017, an anonymous Twitter account going by Global Soccer Fan began attacking Major League Soccer and the U.S. Soccer Federation, comparing their leaders to notorious criminals. The tweets from @fan_global compared MLS Commissioner Don Garber and U.S. Soccer President Sunil Gulati to convicted rapist Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, God.
And the late Ponzi schemer Bernie Madoff. And the person behind the account likely would have remained secret forever. But then former NASL chairman Rocco Commisso spent years funding an antitrust lawsuit against MLS and U.S. Soccer, and discovering that lawsuit revealed that Commisso is Global Soccer Fan. He sent the tweets. Not exactly adult, mature behavior on the part of Rocco. Now, here is this is the thing. I'm sort of vaguely intellectually aware that stuff like this happens. I mean, obviously there's been famous instances of athletes in particular being outed as having burner. Kevin Durant famously has had burner accounts and has gotten involved in conversations with fans while pretending to be somebody else. But as Placata says, do we think Don Garber has a burner account? Absolutely, Don Garber has a burner account. 100% Don Garber has a burner account. Now, I tend to think, though, and this is from interacting with these gentlemen over the past 10, 15 years, right? I've talked to Don Garber several times. I've talked to Rocco Commisso several times, although it's been a couple years. I've also witnessed their behavior, seen them conduct themselves publicly. I don't think Don is a tweeter, or I don't think Don posts. Don may use his burner account to keep an eye on things, to see what the conversations are, but I don't know if the man is actively engaging. Like, I get the sense. And
he might tell other people to.
That's true. It could be that other people are doing those things on behalf of Don Garber. I don't think he's above that. I don't think he's above delegating burner action, right? Like, go out there and start a fight with that person because they said MLS stinks, right? That kind of thing. Like, but see, Don's also the kind of guy that will clap back publicly when he thinks the league has been besmirched. So in the case of Jurgen Klinsmann talking about players going to Europe, remember, Don Garber famously got mad at Jurgen Klinsmann publicly for what Klinsmann said while head coach the U.S. men's national team. Mm-hmm. That I don't know that Don Garber's the kind that would need to engage in this, But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misreading him. You never know what people are capable of in their private lives behind closed doors when they're, just imagine Rocco Camiso in his California King, sitting in his mansion or wherever he lives. And now he's in Florence a lot of time, but, he's a New York guy. And just like, I can't believe they said that about the NAS. Don Garber, he's a criminal. Like that is hilarious. Hilarious to think about that.
It's sitting up happening under the covers late at night, like that guy sucks. I can't believe it. And Nate kind of throwing the gauntlet down. The Madoff comparison is not unfair. He says the double negative equaling the positive.
Yes, it is.
I mean, that was corruption and scamming on just like a completely huge scale. And while I imagine Nate is talking about kind of leveraging, public funds for stadiums and kind of playing the real estate politics game, maybe where he's getting that allusion to Madoff. But Madoff, one of the biggest con artists of all time, that's a heavy one. That's a heavy one.
It's passion, and I get it. And Nate is just speaking from a position of not liking the business model or the way that Major League Soccer has operated, or as you said, leveraging some things and real estate plays and all that stuff. But most of that stuff, and maybe there's things we don't know, sure. And obviously in this case, what Rocco and NASL are suing U.S. Soccer and MLS over is conspiring to hold back competition in terms of Major League Soccer. And there are certainly things that we don't like there. Nate, again, adding Ponzi scheme. Is MLS a Ponzi scheme? We don't have time. Nate's also giving us a winking emoji. We'll leave that alone, right? We'll leave that alone. I did want to bring into this conversation, though, since we're covering this trial. And we we've done a couple segments. We have a couple videos on this. And I will remind you, if you haven't seen it, I did an interview with Stephen Bank as things were getting underway that is very informative. And he outlines what's at stake here. And I think what's important to remember, if you haven't been following this trial or this lawsuit since it started in 2017, is that via decision by the judge, they've limited the scope. It is no longer in terms of the judgment that Major League Soccer would have to, U.S. Soccer, maybe because of acting on behalf of MLS or conspiring with MLS. It's no longer the case that U.S. Soccer would have to eliminate the professional league standards, which is what this is really all about. And I guess a quick synopsis of what that is, Rob, for people who don't know. U.S. Soccer put into place rules about what criteria you needed to meet in order to be a first division league or a second division league or a third division league in professional soccer in the United States. It includes things like you have to cover a number of time zones, and the metropolitan areas of the markets that you are in have to be a certain number, and stadiums have to be a certain size, and you have to have this
net
quality
worth
of lights.
Of the owners.
Net worth of the owners. That's a big one. If you're a top level team, your owner has to have a net worth of at least $10 million. If you're a second tier team, it has to be $1 million. Things like that. I'm not sure those are exact numbers, but they're in the neighborhood.
For example, to be a D2 team, Detroit City FC had to get a ghost investor to hit the second division ownership level standards.
Right, because none of the original 5 Detroit City FC owners had the net worth necessary to meet the professional league standards. Okay, so U.S. Soccer put these in place. The lawsuit is basically saying that U.S. Soccer applied them unfairly to NASL, or that they were put in place to restrict NASL to the benefit of Major League Soccer. Anti-competitive behavior, right? Now, the judge has eliminated PLS directly as part of the lawsuit. This is now just about the monetary award, and whether it's not that the PLS themselves are unjust or should be canceled, it's that they were applied unfairly. So it's no longer, the jury's no longer deciding if PLS should go away. They're only deciding if U.S. Soccer applied them unfairly to NASL, and that NASL should get compensated for that. This, after my discussion with Stephen Bank, and the last video we posted with an update, Carmelo Anthony on the stand, you remember this? We talked about Melo, talking about Puerto Rico FC, and how the judge said this is more of an owner issue, not a league issue. Peter Wilt, everybody knows Peter Wilt, right? Peter Wilt, who started the Chicago Fire, who started Ford Madison, who started Indy 11, who started a club in Chicago, who was a part of the original idea around NISA. Peter Wilt, who has written a manifesto on promotion and relegation in America. Peter Wilt is a gigantic figure in sort of I would call it the alternative soccer world. Is that a way to think of Peter Wilt, Robert? Because After he left the Fire,
he's less corporate approach to it.
He's never been involved in MLS since then, right? He's never directly been involved in MLS. He has been very much kind of the people's champion for the idea that soccer needs to be more open and available to everyone. And he responded on Blue Sky to me about our last video. He said, I think you missed the point of the impact of a potential NASL win, because I outlined it as this is mainly about rich people going after rich people, and ultimately this won't change a lot in terms of how soccer is administered in the United States. He said, it's not just the $500 million and divestment of some in Soccer United marketing. Importantly, it's a change, elimination of PLS, opening up club ownership to all types of ownership classes other than high net worth individuals, opens up potential for open system leagues. Right, again, and this is, Peter Wilt is a champion of that idea, open system leagues. And obviously, if you said there's no longer a requirement that you have a majority shareholder of a club who has a net worth of $1 million or 10 million or 20 or 30 or whatever it is that the professional league standards say, then you could do other things. One of those things, Peter did not mention it, one of those things is collective ownership, right? One of those things is the idea of sort of like the Green Bay Packers, right? Everybody owns a little bit of the club, and then we all vote, and then that, we have a board, and then we don't have to do this thing where we have to find some rich individual, which makes the barrier to entry much higher. Now we can start clubs that are organized in different ways, and that could bring new ways of running soccer in America. Now, I responded to Peter that was not my understanding of what it was at stake in the trial, because that's what Stephen Banks said on Morning Kickaround, that was no longer in play. Peter saying maybe not a de jure result of a verdict, but surely de facto. And then the last one here, he said, PLS will likely be softened either way. It was in place long enough to give MLS its hold on a first division monopoly so that they may no longer feel the protection is necessary. Now, I don't have a conclusion to draw. I just wanted to bring in Peter's thoughts here, Rob, and maybe get what you think about what he's saying. The idea that kind of regardless, if I think it only probably happens if NASL wins. But if NASL wins, whatever the monetary award might be, does that then create a scenario in which U.S. Soccer has to say, okay, no more PLS, or let's fundamentally rewrite PLS to allow things like what Peter is talking about?
Just interesting. I mean, what Peter Wilt is asking for, or is bringing to light, is kind of more of a nuance. It's not an absolute. So far, this has come to trial, and so we're discussing the PLS again. SUM, Sports United Marketing, has already been, broken up. So there's already been, progress in that sense. There's been an uncoupling of MLS from the broadcast deal with the national team. So there has already been changes that were in the original claims that has already been an impact. I think that while, it would necessitate an NASL win to have a larger impact on all of these things, but I think it's already done so. I think maybe the most damaging thing is if there is an award, but it's tiny, a la the USFL thing back in the 80s. So like, oh yeah, they did grant the waivers wrong, here's $10 or something like that. I feel like that's the biggest danger, but I think one of these kind of like de facto impacts could be the waivers, some sort of maybe there's some oversight on what leagues receive waivers and some sort of alteration of the waiver distribution process, and maybe there's some sort of intermediary rather than it just be USSF or MLS, or maybe they feel like it's decreed by the judgment that there's already been enough separation, so thanks for your time, and we've already done enough just getting here.
Yeah, like that will feel unfair to Rocco for sure, but to a lot of people who were backing NASL's challenge on principle, rather than I'm a Rocco guy, or I think the NASL was screwed. I think a lot of people, a lot of soccer fans in America just don't like the way things were done, and I don't whether it rises to the legal standard for a judgment, I can't tell you. I'm not a lawyer, but I do think it's really hard to argue that U.S. Soccer didn't, clear the way and do lots of things to benefit Major League Soccer and to help Major League Soccer whether that was to the detriment of other leagues, again, that's more of a legal question, right? And there's like a realpolitik view of this, and then there's the what's right, what's just, and what's legal view of this. Because if you're old enough, and I happen to be old enough, you remember when we didn't have any professional men's outdoor leagues of note, right? Yeah. We had like the Western United States Soccer Association, and there were like 4 teams or 8 teams, and they came and went like it was like a revolving door of clubs, right? Those days. Major League Soccer is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. There are lots of things wrong with it. There are lots of ways it operates that don't feel right, but it's kind of difficult to imagine we're even in this moment, if not for Major League Soccer sort of laying a groundwork, right? Like, I don't know. Does the NASL even exist in the form it did, if not for Major League Soccer kind of opening up more of a soccer market? I mean, these are more subjective questions than they are objective things. But that's where we're at with this. It's this notion that, like, soccer needs to be run in a certain way. That's not how U.S. Soccer runs it, and therefore tear the whole thing down. That, of course, butts up against some of the issues that we have. You kind of can't have it both ways. You can't have a strong national federation that puts rules into place that dictates things like an open system and promotion and relegation, and then say, well, but we don't want, we also want antitrust law to be involved in all of this, because if antitrust law applies, people are going to sue anytime anybody makes a decision that feels even mildly anti-competitive. And so I think I understand what Rocco's point is here, that the NASL has done things that make sense, again, legally, in terms of the law, but that doesn't mean it's all sort of like this is the best thing for soccer if U.S. Soccer loses, or even if they win. Even if they win, I'm not sure that there's any winners out of this. If it happens that PLS is softened and what Peter says does come to pass, then I could imagine that it'll be at least more interesting and the possibilities will grow. But, and here's the tension, I'm going to bring in my man Jonathan Tannenwald again from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Go read his stuff. As much as I like Peter, he's not the one who will come in without the money up front to own a team, assume he'll make it, not actually make it, then panic and bail, right? And now Peter's seen clubs come and go. He's certainly aware of that. And I'm not going to speak for Peter, but this is always the concern as an American soccer fan, that we don't have clubs that will stand the test of time. And we have to stop salting the earth every time a club comes and goes. There have been markets that have been able to sort of see clubs born from nothing after after other clubs have collapsed. But there's lots of places where it's like, well, there was a team and they built a fan base and then they went out of business and now nobody does soccer there anymore. And we can't have that. That's not the way to grow the game.
Yeah, there's so many fractured and splintered relationships with the sport and the teams that we don't really want to add anymore. This trial continues. We shall monitor it and continue with it. One of my main takeaways now is just what an imperfect messenger for the change of soccer. Obviously, bringing the funds, Rocco Camiso, to bring this to this point, 7 years of litigation, but an imperfect messenger.
I will also say Peter Wilt has an open invitation and an extended one over on Blue Sky, an open invitation to come on this show. Love talking to Peter. Been a while. Hi, Peter. Come on Morning Kickaround.
Yeah, that would be great to have Peter. Definitely come on down here and join us on Morning Kickaround. And if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button, Morning Kickaround on YouTube. We are on our way to 1,000 subscribers, and it's going great. Thank you for clicking the button. If you haven't already, do so, please. At @mkickaround on the social media platforms, X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And new to the show, we have a Ko-Fi page. If you're able to do so, please, a one-time donation or maybe a regular thing, kofi.com/morningkickaround. We'll take a breath, come right back with today's hot topic. All right, saving the best for last. Today's hot topic: Major League Soccer clarified their participation and their position on the domestic cups, most namely the Open Cup. Who's going to be in it? Who won't be? Who's going to be in the rearranged Leagues Cup? Now we know. Major League Soccer, in short, announced that the top performing teams in the league will go to the League Cup, bottom performing teams to the Open Cup, and then every Major League Soccer team will need to participate in at least one, but no more than two competitions moving forward.
All right, so we got the graphic that MLS put out. It's difficult to see this on our screen because the logos, the badges are very small in some cases. And if you don't know, especially in that MLS Next Pro area that are competing in the Open Cup, some of those are not badges you'll know. Carolina Core, for example, you can kind of barely see the little fox on the background with the sunset. It's a nice badge, by the way. Tacoma Defiance is down there. Anyway, is this progress is the conversation that is happening right now, Rob? Because obviously last year we had the whole big brouhaha. Major League Soccer is critical of the Open Cup. Don Garber goes public with his displeasure with the way the Open Cup is run at a U.S. Soccer board meeting, not as MLS commissioner, but as a board member of U.S. Soccer. That then created this thing, MLS is not going to participate. And then okay, we're going to put some of our teams, and then a lot of MLS Next Pro teams. And so they are framing this as what? A doubling of the teams participating in the U.S. Open Cup, which is absolutely manipulating the messaging.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's absolutely manipulating the messaging. Now, there has been this drawdown on the Leagues Cup, which last year before, involved everybody. Every single team was involved. Now, there are only 16 teams involved. So the league is kind of saying, well, the Leagues Cup needs to change, and we don't want to put all our teams in it. But it's still very important because look at the number of teams that are participating in the League Cup versus the Open Cup. And then, of course, you have the MLS Next Pro teams. And you can't have, because of U.S. Soccer rules, and this is standard around the world, you can't have affiliated teams playing one another in a competition. So if the Columbus Crew are going to be in the Leagues Cup, and not in the Open Cup, and the Columbus Crew 2 are going to be in the Open Cup, then Columbus Crew. Again, this is so imperfect, but being sold to us as progress. I'm not even sure how I feel about it right now.
Mike Thomas in the chat saying very deliberately positions Open Cup as a less than cup compared to the Leagues Cup. Yeah, I mean, well said. I mean, you can't say that. I mean, and I don't know if you just said it just now, but this separation of these teams prevents last year's winners from defending their title. I mean, that's inherently, like, you always want to defend your title no matter what competition you're in, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's ridiculous, right? Like, if there's anything that sort of like fundamentally feels wrong about this, it's that we have a situation where a defending champion is not defending their title. And, that's disrespectful to the Open Cup. I mean, first and foremost, from a traditional perspective and, what's important and this isn't even really like, oh, we're aping what other countries do, right? Sometimes that is a way that people think about soccer in this country and like, oh, we should do this because England does it or because Italy does it or because Spain does it. And I don't know if I always love that because America can be different. There's no rules that say we have to do things exactly the same way as other countries. But in this case, this tournament goes back 110 years now. I think we're at 110, something like that. This is a tournament that existed well before Major League Soccer. And if you are going to involve yourself directly and truly with American soccer in a way that, say, the NASL 1.0 did not, because they did not participate in the Open Cup, well, then you should be putting all of your teams in this. Not just because that's what they do in England in the FA Cup, but because that's always been the case for U.S. soccer affiliated leagues in America, going back to a time before cars, Rob, or when cars were brand new. They didn't even have dashboard, music or anything like that. I don't know what I'm thinking. Anyway, continue.
I got to point out, I got to push back on some conversation in the chat. Picata saying nobody who complains about MLS Open Cup watched the Open Cup. And I really have to push back on that because I think it was even last year, the year before, on MLS.com's website when they did a year in review. I think 2 or 3 of their top 10 moments of the year were in Open Cup themselves. Cincinnati fans, tell them that the Open Cup didn't matter.
Sure.
Tell there's a long list of memories that are core memories to a lot of different fan bases where that moment happened in a U.S. Open Cup. And I'll admit, yeah, there's some games that are pretty drab that kind of like come and go and you don't notice. But some of the all-time classic, at least I've talked to many people, myself, games that really stood out were in the Open Cup.
I also point out that there are teams not participating in anything here. I mean, do you? Okay, maybe I'm wrong about that, but there's certainly there's also clubs that have proud traditions in the Open Cup who aren't participating in the Open Cup. Seattle, Sporting Kansas City, those two teams have 4 Open Cups each. They're tied with the Chicago Fire for most Open Cups won.
Yeah,
by
tell
an
a
MLS
Fire
team.
fan that the Open Cup doesn't matter.
They're tied for most Open Cups by an MLS team, and if they win another one, they would tie the all-time record, which is currently held by Bethlehem Steel, the original Bethlehem Steel, and Maccabi Los Angeles. Those two teams have 5. So the only team that can actually meet that number and tie that record and become the winningest MLS team in this competition ever is Chicago, because neither Seattle nor Sporting is competing in this year's edition. And if, let's say, I don't think it's likely, but let's say the Chicago Fire win the Open Cup. If you're a Sounders fan or a Sporting Kansas City fan and you care about this tournament, wouldn't you be like, what the hell? We didn't even have a chance to play for it. They beat us to it, and we didn't even get a chance. Like, come on. Now, I do want to add more to this conversation because a man who's been in the chat watching the show today, Jonathan Tannenwald, who writes at Inquirer.com in Philadelphia on American Soccer Topics, does it as well as anybody. Please support Jonathan and subscribe to the Philadelphia Inquirer. He had this story yesterday about the Open Cup. MLS and U.S. Soccer make progress towards peace over the Open Cup. This is a quote from Nelson Rodriguez, who is involved in the league's executive group now. I can't remember what his title is. It doesn't really matter. Nelson Rodriguez is a mouthpiece for the league on issues of competitive things. Formerly of the Chicago Fire, formerly of Chivas USA. You should, if you're a Fire fan, you definitely know who Nelson Rodriguez is. Quote, "We wanted improved travel reimbursement for all teams. Our view is no team should participate in the Open Cup at a financial loss. We think greater transparency on seeding and draws and how is important. Better promotion of the matches is important. Venue standards and field standards become important. We believe there should be more amateur versus pro games because that's where the richness and the history and the charm comes in." This is all manipulating the narrative to MLS's ends, right? They've built up some excuses for why they're not putting all their teams in. And they're saying, look, there's problems with the competition. Again, I don't think that the approach to something that has this much history should be to pull your teams out. You should read the article at the Inquirer that Jonathan wrote on this. It's got a lot more in it, some more quotes from Nelson Rodriguez.
And some of this connects with the previous segment about the USSF versus NASL suit of, having too much power in one bucket with MLS. And because if you recall, pre this reorganization of the tournament, US Open Cup had adjusted their whole schedule and the way this was all formatted to placate to MLS's needs. And let's forget we're talking about waivers and whatnot as well with the lawsuit. There's a FIFA mandate that all teams of all stature participate in their domestic cup. So they're getting a waiver on that as well. So there are, a few number of legitimate gripes. I know some people, there's this talk about, chicken or the egg. How do we make this competition make money? Da-da-da-da. But yeah. I think this quote from Nelson Rodriguez, if you didn't know who he is, encapsulates his role for MLS perfectly. He is the mouthpiece for Spin Zone, and him saying, look, there's a problem with this when the competition would obviously make the changes to placate to them again if needed, but you're just kind of creating these issues when they're not really here. And then it's a little bit rich when he says, the amateur versus the pro games are the ones that drive interest. It's like, well, you just decreed something that eliminates half of your teams from participating in that and creating those pro versus amateur matchups. So It's a bit of a hollow statement you got in front of us here, Jason.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. It's a lot of bluster. It's a lot of justification for pulling out of the tournament, a tournament that they don't control. And it certainly felt originally when they did this last year that it had a lot to do with Apple saying, wait a second, Lionel Messi's going to play in a competition that we don't get to broadcast. That's not what we signed up for. How dare you take away, our golden goose and have him play in a different competition altogether. So, I don't know if that's exactly what's in play. I mean, obviously, Messi and Miami made a run to an Open Cup final, and I imagine that the Apple executives were upset about that. It was drawing attention. There is a lot more to this story in Jonathan Tannenwald's piece of The Inquirer, so definitely check that out. But also, please go over to thecup.us and read what Josh Hakala and his team, Jake Sillick, has a story on this that outlines some of the detail here, because there's things about venues and how they're defined, primary venues, who has to use them. There's attendance that matters, or capacity that matters here. There's also some things about hosting and who will host and who will be away, and sort of how that plays out. This is not a compromise that's going to make everybody happy. Clearly, there will be some absolutists who say MLS teams should all be in this thing. What the hell is this? But I do think if you are a supporter and a booster of lower division soccer, there's some stuff here that you can kind of sink your teeth into and think, all right, I see why that could be beneficial to us. Meaning, again, lower leagues, lower division teams, maybe even the amateur sides as they go into this.
We shall see how this all plays out, but the Open Cup and Leagues Cup participations revealed here this week. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this live episode, and thank you for subscribing to the channel, Morning Kickaround, at on YouTube. We are on the march to 1,000 subscribers. Follow us along on social media at Kickaround, and on email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. Brand new to the show, we have a Ko-Fi page, ko-fi.com/morningkickaround, where you can buy us a coffee or choose to donate any sum you would like. Do you have any final words before we kick on out of here and train our eyeballs to watch 18 games of soccer?
Good luck. God bless. Good luck. Godspeed. That's what I want to say. Godspeed.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you on Friday. And until then, enjoy your soccer.